Thanks so much for joining us today. We are talking with Emma Lady, who is a multi-talented lady who's going to talk to us today about but an inspiring journey nonetheless. So I'm just trying to get her to join.
Hey, hi
Hey!
Lisa.
Hi Emma, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Very well, thanks. It's really good to see you again.
You too.
You're looking very well. You've been out
Thank you.
enjoying
So
the
are you.
beautiful weather.
I know. Yeah, I'm just enjoying it whilst it lasts. You know what UK weather's like?
I know, it's always a worry, isn't it, when May and June are good, because you think, oh, July and August, what are they going to bring? This is
Exactly.
our summer. Make the most of it.
Yes, indeed.
So, Emma, I was just in the throes of introducing you as a British-Ghanaian lady, and you're multi-talented. I mean, it's quite a long list of your achievements. You're a certified fitness and nutrition coach. You are also a menopause wellness advocate and speaker, and an author of a book called Journey to Wellness, which I believe you wrote, was that last year?
So I wrote the book in 2019, but it was recently made available on Amazon this year.
Okay. Okay. And you're also the founder of the Relentless Boss Welcome Coaching Programme, which we'd like to hear more about as well. But
Yes.
today's topic is focusing on mental health. And I think that you have a lot to say about that, having experienced quite a journey yourself. And hopefully you're able to share some of those learnings, the highs and lows today, so that other people who are struggling can feel that they're not alone and that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for myself personally, I really got a shock to my system with perimenopause because although I knew I would experience menopause, it wasn't something that was at the forefront of my mind. It wasn't something that I was thinking about. And so I was completely blindsided by
How
it.
old were you?
So I first started experiencing symptoms at the age of 38.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's young, isn't it?
Yes. Although I have found out, which I'm sure we're going to discuss in this conversation, that you can actually start experiencing perimenopause symptoms as early as age 35.
Goodness me.
So, but of course, when I first started experiencing the symptoms, I wasn't aware of that. I just thought I was losing my mind. I
And
thought I was
what sort of symptoms were you talking about?
so psychological symptoms, mental health symptoms like depression, irritability, panic attacks, brain fog,
Mm.
memory issues like memory lapse, forgetfulness. I became very clumsy. I mean, I'm clumsy on a best day, but you know, it went up a notch.
I can see.
um, but for me, I think the worst part of it was just the depression and
Mm.
suicidal ideations. Just feeling completely overwhelmed with life,
Mm.
feeling like I was no longer I didn't feel like a human being. I don't even know how to really put that in words,
Mm.
or describe the feeling. I felt like I was no longer a woman. Like I felt like I'd lost my womanhood. I'd lost myself. I was losing
Mm.
myself. That's how it felt,
Mm.
mentally and emotionally. Extreme feelings of anger, hopelessness,
Mm.
um, minor tasks that I would usually just knock out were now becoming were now actually causing me anxiety,
Mm.
like extreme anxiety. Just the thought of doing menial tasks brought on this real extreme anxiety
Mm.
that came out from nowhere. There was no circumstances in my life to say or to pinpoint to say this is the reason
Mm.
I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
It felt like it happened suddenly overnight.
Gosh. And who did you turn to at that point in time? Family, friends? Did you go straight to a doctor?
So I didn't go straight to a doctor, um, because I I actually didn't know what was wrong with me. I
Mm.
couldn't say, okay, this is what's wrong with me. Because I didn't know it was perimenopause, so I just thought I was losing my mind. At a
Mm.
point, I almost went to a psychiatric hospital, which is actually nearby my
Mm.
home, because I thought I could harm myself.
Oh
Like,
gosh.
it was so extreme. Um, I'm a very private person as well. I try not to share my problems with people
Mm.
unless you're in my inner circle. So I have a close knit circle of friends and family who, I have a really great connection with. But even them, I felt like I didn't want to burden them
Oh.
with what I was going through.
Yeah.
So I actually told my mentor what was going on with me. And actually, through just me sharing that information with her, I did experience a breakthrough. And I was able to actually, for a period, feel better.
Mm.
However, as you know, with perimenopause, it can be up and down. It's kind of like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
So the symptoms continued. I literally just tried to remedy the symptoms with my lifestyle. So,
Yeah.
nutrition, fitness. I walk a lot in nature, and that helped tremendously. But yeah, that is kind of like what I try to do. So I did not go to my
Mm.
GP for the symptoms that I was experiencing. I actually didn't visit my GP until so I was 38 when it started, and I first went to my GP when I was 41 or 42.
Yeah. That must have been a very dark time, very lonely, frightening time.
Yeah,
Because, obviously you're very active, you eat well, you look after yourself, and to be suffering like that would have been very frightening. You just have no idea
absolutely.
what's going on. So then you did eventually reach out to your GP, and how did you feel able to articulate everything that you've just described?
Yes. So I was able to articulate what I was going through at that point, because I'd been going through it for now, 38, 39, 40, so about 4 years now at that point.
Gosh.
I wrote down all of my symptoms,
Mm.
and I was experiencing over 30 plus
Mm.
symptoms. Now I know that perimenopause can actually cause over 100 symptoms, physical and psychological and emotional
Yeah.
symptoms. What I did not know at the time of going to my GP was how perimenopause affects the brain. And because it affects the brain, in turn, it causes the psychological symptoms that I've mentioned, like the depression, anxiety, panic
Mm.
attacks, even the vasomotor symptoms like hot flashes, which
Hmm.
commonly we all associate with
Yeah.
menopause, night sweats, and things like that. So when I went to my doctor, so to cut a long story short, because I just for the sake of time, I spoke to 3 doctors. The first doctor I spoke to dismissed what I was telling him about my symptoms. He told me that I was just depressed, and he sent me away with a suggestion of prescribing me antidepressants.
But no prescription.
No prescription, no further investigation,
Even though you've
just,
been suffering for 4 years.
yeah, no. Literally, that's it was. And
Wow.
he was very abrupt. He was very sort of like, I don't have time to hear all of your symptoms. Very sort of like, I want to get you off the phone, rushing me off the phone. And at one point, even told me, because I actually said to him, I think what I'm experiencing is hormonal.
Yeah.
And at one point, he told me I was talking nonsense. I'm too young to go through menopause, and you're just depressed. I'm just going to prescribe you some antidepressants. And that was it. That was the first doctor.
Wow.
Second, so that was it's important for me to also note that the doctor was a white male, just for context.
Yeah.
And then the second doctor, a female, Asian female doctor, she listened to everything I had to say. I asked if I could have blood tests done to check my hormones. And she sent me for the blood test, and my hormones came back, well, according to her, I appear to be in full blown menopause.
Wow.
So full blown menopause is when you haven't, for those who don't know, you haven't had a period for 12 months.
Yeah. And you've been suffering with this for 4 years by this point.
Yes. So I had all of those 30 plus symptoms that I mentioned for 4 years. My period had stopped during that 4 years. My period had stopped for 3 months, but then it had returned. So I was having a consistent regular monthly period when I went for the blood tests with the second doctor. She said my estrogen was completely tanked. But again, with blood tests are not always an accurate.
No. It fluctuates, doesn't it?
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly. Blood tests are not accurate to show whether or not you're in menopause, which is why I'm really advocating for medical practitioners to really listen more to women. And when women are saying, this is what I feel emotionally, mentally, and physically, these are the things that I'm experiencing, because you cannot, which is obvious from my own experience, my estrogen was low at that point. But when I went to go and do blood tests 6 months later, my estrogen was fine. But yet I was still having the symptoms.
Okay.
So
yeah, this is what makes it so hard to diagnose, isn't it?
exactly. So so the second doctor did the blood test. The blood test came back. She said, you look like you're in full-blown menopause. Then she said, well, I'm not an advocate of HRT. However, I would recommend you go on HRT.
And you were 42 by this point.
Yeah,
is that right?
around 41,
yeah.
42, yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll think about HRT, because I like most women, have heard negative things about hormone replacement therapy and its connection or its link to breast cancer risk. And so I said to her, I'd think about it. Whilst I was thinking about it, she went off sick.
Oh, no.
So,
oh, God.
So,
which leads you on to doctor number 3, right?
Doctor number 3.
Oh, dear.
Doctor number 3. Doctor number 3 was a male, unfortunately, not listening, not paying attention, sent me off to have blood tests done again. At this point, my vitamin D was deficient. But my vitamin D has always, and for most people, vitamin D is, especially if you're in the UK. Places like the UK, exactly, your vitamin D is more likely than not going to be deficient. He sent me off with a vitamin D prescription and outright told me, I'm not going to prescribe you HRT. You're too young for menopause. So that was my experience in a nutshell with conventional medicine. So I had to figure out a way of minimizing the symptoms, creating my own and developing my own toolkit as I'm continuing to develop and build that toolkit, which is what I teach in my coaching program. Natural ways to really just try and minimize the symptoms with the
So, Emma,
view.
can I ask you that you were prescribed the antidepressants as the first line treatment? Did you take those? Did they make any difference?
So he made a suggestion that he would prescribe me antidepressants, but I said no.
Right.
So I didn't actually take antidepressants because in my mind, it's not antidepressants I need. I need you to send me for further investigation, or I need you to explore something else, because this is more than what you're saying. All these symptoms that I'm experiencing, these panic attacks, extreme anxiety, like anger, when I say anger, I mean like rage, like, you know, um, and I know many women who are going to watch this, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yeah,
is
I
is
think it's a
is
common symptom, isn't it?
you know, and this is the thing, what society will say, you know, she's losing her mind, she's losing her marbles, she's going crazy. But it's literally something is going on in your brain.
Mm.
Something is going on in a woman's brain. Like there literally is something profound going on in the brain during this perimenopause transition.
Mm.
And that's what I had to go and research for myself, become my own
Mm-hmm.
advocate, read and study on perimenopause and menopause and the symptoms and how it affects the brain
Mm-hmm.
and how it affects women. And I was just astounded by what I found, and I just couldn't believe that this information was not readily available to women everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now menopause is trending, but it's something that women have been experiencing for centuries. I mean, every woman, you know, if you're blessed to live long enough, is going to experience
Something.
menopause.
Yeah.
51% of the population is going to experience
Yeah.
menopause.
It's not a surprise.
Right. So, you know, I mean, so what I found, just real quick, is in the brain. So there's areas of the brain which estrogen. So I mentioned earlier that I had the blood test done and my estrogen had gone down.
Yeah.
So for those who
Yeah.
are watching, perimenopause is the transition
Yeah.
before you actually get to menopause, when you haven't had a period for 12 months, and menopause is literally one day. So that's the last day of your period, of having not had a period for 12 months.
Yeah.
Perimenopause is the transitional period before you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's studies that show that it can take between 4 to 8 years for you to go through that perimenopause transition. However, for Black women, it can be longer.
Mm-hmm.
So it can actually be between 10 to 14 years if you're a Black woman or other
Yeah.
ethnicities. And that this is something that we are actually not, we don't have an answer to why that is the case. So this is why I am talking about this topic, because to raise
Yeah.
awareness, and also we need studies. We need more studies done on
Yeah.
why Black women, some Asian women, Hispanics, literally, we can start experiencing perimenopause as early as age 35,
Mm-hmm.
and with severe, like more
Yeah.
severe symptoms, like the vasomotor symptoms, which are the hot flashes, night sweats, can be more severe. The psychological symptoms like the depression, anxiety, panic attacks can also be more severe.
Mm.
And I mean, you're saying that for Black women, but even in this country, we had a lady, I can't remember her name, poor soul, but the lady, she lost her life through suicide.
Mm.
And it was found, the coroner found that her mental health or her psychological symptoms were linked to
Yeah.
menopause. But there was no, so the medical practitioners that were involved with this lady's case did not correlate what she was experiencing with menopause. So this is where it's not just a thing of course, I'm a Black woman and I care about, you know, what is going on with us in the healthcare system, the
Yeah.
disparities that are going on.
Yeah.
But I also realize that this isn't just an issue of color. This is an issue affecting all women.
Yeah.
It's affecting
Absolutely.
all women, because there is a, you know, where we talk about gender gap for
Yeah.
pay, there's also a gender gap for health as
Yeah.
well. When a
Yeah.
woman goes into the doctors and tells the doctor that she's experiencing these symptoms, she's dismissed.
Mm.
She's not seen, she's not heard. She's completely dismissed. And there are women who are, like myself, went for 4 years or even more, suffering these symptoms
Mm.
with no medical care, no
It's just
attention.
unacceptable. I mean, I know that 'cause I used to work in the mental health field, and there was the Edinburgh rating scale that doctors would use to measure depression, you would ask a series of questions, and if a patient scored a certain score, you would know that they were probably clinically depressed. And I wonder whether we need something like that, that's almost a menopause score, that so women, you know, you've turned up with 30 plus symptoms, that just can't be ignored. That's not normal, is it? You know,
Right.
regardless of your age, you know, if somebody's suffering, what do we do about it? You can't just dismiss somebody with no solution. The woman you've mentioned, she's taken her own life, which is just a total waste of somebody's life, which is terrible.
Yeah.
So just to continue your journey, so you saw doctor number 3, and what led you to where you are now? Was it doctor number 3, or has there been somebody since?
So yeah, so doctor number 3, and then doctor number 2, the Asian lady, returned back to work, and I then saw her again and explained to her that I'm still experiencing all these symptoms. Without questions asked, she just said, well, would you like to try HRT?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was like, yeah, I've tried, because I'd done all my research from the last time I spoke to her to that point. I'd done my research on hormone replacement therapy. I've read
Yeah.
books, I've read articles and journals on menopause. So and on hormone replacement therapy. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm actually going to try hormone replacement
Yeah.
therapy, because it had got to the point where I was not able to function in my normal day-to-day life, and I needed to do something. The things that I had done in terms of supplements, I mean, I've got a whole supplement PDF of supplements to take for specific things, as it pertains to you know, your brain health and also just your health in general, because there's so many different health issues that can come from menopause for a woman later on. And I'm really concerned about Alzheimer's disease,
Mm-hmm.
dementia, which women can develop that in older
Yeah.
age as a direct result of menopause if we don't take precautions
Mm-hmm.
during this perimenopause transition and post-menopause transition. So the second doctor prescribed me hormone replacement therapy. So I'm currently on hormone replacement therapy. I have the estradiol patch,
Mm-hmm.
and I've also started taking the progesterone orally.
Yes.
So it's early days for me to actually know whether or not it's having an impact.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it a good 3
Yeah.
months to see how it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, as we say, which is the truth, it's not one size fits all for
No, that's
all
right.
women.
There's no magic solution,
No,
sadly.
every
And
woman experiences menopause differently, even from mum to daughter.
mm,
You know, there are some stats that show that if your mum experienced menopause in a certain way, then the daughter is automatically going to experience it in that way. But that's not true.
no, it's not.
My own mum, she started her experiencing perimenopause, or she entered into perimenopause according to her when she was 43. The only symptom that she recalls was hot
Mm-hmm.
flashes, and she said her period ended in her mid to late 40s,
Mm.
and that is not my experience, even though that's
No.
my mum.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not one size fits all. My mum never went on HRT. She never had any medical
Mm.
assistance for, and I'm certain that there's probably some other symptoms that she experienced that she was unable to articulate.
Mm.
So this is why these conversations are so important.
Absolutely. And I know that, Emma, you've talked, obviously, with your Ghanaian heritage, you've talked about the Ghanaian community being sometimes restrictive to talk openly about some of these issues, which I would imagine has compounded your difficulty with getting help, because there's not been an easy conversation to have. Is that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You know, not even just in the Ghanaian community, just African American, African Caribbean, African, when it comes to talking about menopause, there is still a stigma attached to the word menopause. The word menopause connotes you're old, you know, you're you're
It's such a shame though, isn't it? I mean, it's like saying don't talk about puberty. It's the most, it's a life stage. It's a
right.
chapter, isn't it? Right? Why would men, it's like a badge of shame that we're being brandished with. And I think hopefully we're trying to get rid of that. It's just
Yes,
another stage in life.
yes, absolutely. We need to get rid of that stigma and the taboo of, don't speak about menopause. In the African community, Afro-Caribbean communities, talking about menopause is kind of like forbidden. I mean, I had one aunt who I mentioned, a few of my aunties I've spoken to them about, or I've tried to speak to them about menopause, and they, as soon as you mention the word, they're literally like, don't mention that word. Like,
Like a
we
swear
don't talk.
word.
Yes.
It's so hilarious though. It's alien to us, isn't it? Our generation now, we're all talking about it, which is lovely, and I hope that we can pass that down to the generations that follow. But what's your feeling? Because you're so close to this, and you've put so much heart and soul into learning and self-improvement and trying to help other people, which is really admirable. What do you think we could all do collectively better to try and help, one, doctors diagnose more readily, and two, just to get people talking about it, and even those older generations? Or do you think that we've got to just park them and focus on the ones coming through?
The thing is that, some of these aunties that I'm talking about are not even far off in age to me. So it's not just like the older generation. It's, bottom line is education.
Yeah.
Education is key. So people need to be educated and informed about menopause. Having conversations like this is key, because these conversations are openly exposing wrong mindsets around menopause, and also the real lived experiences of women who are going through menopause and who we know our bodies more than anyone else. And so when a woman goes into a doctor's surgery and she is explaining to that doctor what she's experiencing, the doctor really needs to take note. But again, medical practitioners also need education. Right now, medical practitioners they don't even get that much training, specifically in menopause. General practitioners don't get that much training in menopause. So all of the information that I have found out, which I've had to go and search for, your everyday general practitioner is not going to be specifically going out to look for that information unless they have a particular specialism in that area or interest in that area. So I think it needs to be something that is across the board, that they are all general practitioners have to learn about menopause. So there's a Cambridge University Press article published in November 2023, and they found in that article, they found through their research that perimenopause can actually bring on mental health, so psychological symptoms, like new psychological symptoms. So if you're a woman who's never experienced depression before, any other psychological symptoms, perimenopause can actually bring on those symptoms. And if you're a woman who has pre-existing psychological symptoms or mental health issues, perimenopause can make it worse.
Absolutely.
So these type of research into perimenopause and also menopause and what it actually does to a woman's health, these are the things that general practitioners should be getting education on. And like you mentioned earlier about having that scale to say, how depressed are you on a scale of 1 to 10, things like that can really help women to also feel like they're being seen and heard, that they're not just being dismissed. Bottom line, as I said, education is key on both sides for both medical practitioners
Yes.
and also for women. We have to be our own health advocates.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah,
I think it's important to say at this point, because we've had this conversation with some of the doctors we've talked to, that we're not saying here that antidepressants aren't right for some people. That can be a good solution on top of other treatments, right? So as well as, say, for example, HRT. So there is a place for antidepressants, but it's not the only answer, which is, I think, where you've ended up, isn't it? You were offered antidepressants and you knew from your own research that there were too many other signs and signals about what was going on hormonally. And that's the difference. It's being that well educated to be able to recognize that.
yes, absolutely. Women have to really take the time, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's going to take a bit of time of your time, it's going to take a bit of energy. In some cases it might even take finances for you to learn, but right now there's so much resource online, like free. The Swan study is online, so I'll just put that one out there. The Swan study was done in 1994, and it was for the study of women's health across the nation. It was based in the US. They did a study on over 3,000 women, of different races, ethnicities, and
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds. And they followed those women for up to 16 years, to really just investigate their health and the menopause transition. So, with their findings, they were able to report, for example, what I said earlier about the fact that Black women can actually start experiencing these psychological symptoms and the vasomotor symptoms as early as age 35,
Yeah.
more severely, and also just experience perimenopause for longer. But also, there was also women taking their own lives as a direct result. So yes, when you say in regards to antidepressants could be the answer for some women. And that's why I say that one size fits all, that's not how it should be. It shouldn't be a blanket
No.
approach for everyone. Antidepressants may work well for one woman. It may not work well for the other woman.
Yeah.
HRT might work well for one woman. It may not work well for the other,
Yeah.
So it has to, like, there's nuances in how each woman experiences perimenopause. And as I mentioned as well with the Cambridge University Press article, them saying that perimenopause can trigger new psychological symptoms or worsen existing ones. So if you already have underlying medical issues, mental health issues, psychological symptoms, perimenopause can make it
Yeah.
worse. So there needs to be an all-round approach, a holistic approach, when we're looking at how can we provide viable solutions or practical solutions for women so that they can actually feel like themselves
Yeah, that's
again.
right. And Emma, you've touched on your personal journey and going to the doctors, all three of them, and having a difficult experience. Is your sense that there are women out there that find it difficult to even go to a doctor because of societal pressures, that particularly Black women are facing, and they're not being listened to, not being heard? Do you think that people are not coming forward because they think they're not going to be listened to?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, in the UK, there's countless stories. I have heard women share their stories of going to the doctors. And of course, your question is, you asked me specifically about Black women. White women are also
Yeah,
experiencing, other races, other ethnicities are also experiencing the same
yeah.
thing. You know, but there's one lady, she's a doctor actually, Dr. Mary Claire
Oh,
Haver.
yeah.
She's written a book called The New Menopause, and it is amazing. I highly recommend that book. She talks about the gender gap when it comes to how men are treated when they go to the doctor and tell the doctor that they're experiencing pain. They're more viewed in a more sympathetic, empathetic way as opposed to women. So imagine that for women in general, going to the doctor and explaining to the doctor that you have pain, you're not going to be getting the same treatment that a man would get, or you wouldn't be viewed in the same way. You would be viewed as maybe, annoying or a nuisance, or, just very dismissively. And then now you're black, add that you're black.
Yeah.
To that, add that you're black. You're more likely than not going to be dismissed, sent away. So that being the case, why would you then want to go to your GP to say to them that this is what's happening to you? And which is, this one study found that majority of the women that they studied for those 16 years, they studied 1,550 white women and 935 black women, and the remaining number was different races and ethnicities. And they said that the black women were more likely than not did not go to the doctor. They didn't receive any medical care attention for their symptoms. So they went through those 16 years with whatever symptoms they were experiencing.
Simply because they don't feel that they're going to be heard.
Yes, they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they feel dismissed.
It's just terrible.
And so first of all, we already have a stigma within the community to not talk about menopause because it's associated with being old, it's associated with, you have nothing more to offer. You're going downhill, that's it, it's over for you. You've got that, and then you've got conventional medicine.
It's a crippling experience, a crippling time of life when it doesn't need to be.
Exactly.
We know that HRT for some women can be an absolute game changer, and it can bring a whole new lease of life, which should be available to everybody and should be enjoyed. And like you talk about Alzheimer's, it's not just dealing with the symptoms you've got. It can be preventative to things like osteoporosis, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of those joys that we have to look forward to in older age. But yeah, I mean, that's a challenge, isn't it? How do we influence the medical profession? How does that happen? What can be done?
I think with the medical profession, things like the loss of life. So I'm aware of 2 ladies in the UK who have lost their life as a result of suicide. The findings after their deaths found that menopause was associated with the symptoms, like their psychological symptoms that they had that led them to suicide. So these cases, as unfortunate as they are, because of course there's loss of life, but these should be the wake-up calls, or the wake-up call to the medical profession, that women need to be taken more seriously when they are telling you their symptoms. And don't just brush it off as automatically, she's just depressed, she needs antidepressants. Do further investigation, educate yourself, inform yourself about the
trouble is that can be so difficult when you are literally rock bottom, like you've described 30 plus symptoms, and you must have been feeling pretty low, I imagine, at that point in your life. To have to dig deep and find the strength to go and do the research that you did takes something quite special, which I imagine a lot of women just can't find, which is terrible, isn't it? Hence the loss of life that you're talking about.
Yes, and I think, it's the education is not just for the medical practitioners. Education is also for family members. Education is also for friends. We all, the conversation that we're having now is contributing to us being aware, so that if we see someone or know someone who seems to not be themselves, then maybe we can say to them, you know, perhaps you should go to the doctor, perhaps you might need HRT or look into it. Because, you know, I heard a lady's story. She shared her story of how she was experiencing psychological symptoms. She was actually a white lady, and her husband is a GP. Now, he'd not had extensive training on menopause, but when his wife was saying to him what she was experiencing, because she was really in a very deep depression and she was suicidal, she ended up getting sectioned. Her husband suggested to her doctors, maybe consider menopause. Maybe that could be what she's experiencing because her age, you know, and so they did prescribe her HRT, and she went back to her normal self.
Wow.
So although yes, her husband was a GP, but if more people, more family members and friends are aware of menopause and are aware of the symptoms that come with perimenopause, specifically the transition before you actually get to menopause, we can then have these conversations. And, you know, like you said, it's very tasking for someone who's going through a myriad of symptoms to actually go and trying to research and trying to read up on everything to do with menopause. That's not going to be the first thing that you're going to be thinking about. However, if we're having conversations like this, we are, for example, I'm talking to my nieces about perimenopause.
Yeah, it's really
because I want them
important.
to be fully aware and equipped. So that when they get there, hopefully they don't have to experience any of the symptoms that I am, but at least they know what I am going through so that when they get there, they can be prepared, and and even before they get there, they can prepare themselves now, because there are things that you can do when it comes to your health, you know, exercising and nutrition, strength training is just super important for muscle development, because we need that for longevity. We need that for our brain health as well. A lot of people talk about strength training for building muscle, for protecting your bones and your joints in later life, but also we need muscle for our brains. And absolutely. So it's super important to share this type of information with family members, to talk about, you know, what can we do to live a healthier life. It's more likely than not that if you're not living a healthy lifestyle in terms of your nutrition and perhaps you're inactive, you know, you might actually experience a lot of these symptoms when it comes to midlife. Heart disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, the metabolic health syndrome or metabolic issues. These type of issues can be exacerbated when it comes to perimenopause. So trying to ensure that you are living a healthy lifestyle can help. But then even in saying that,
it's not that easy, is it though? That's the problem. When you're
not that
feeling
easy. It's not that
tired,
easy,
you're
because
not
even with
sleeping
myself,
well.
you know, even with myself, I'm like, I would say I'm quite fit and healthy for my age, or for any age really, but I still went through all of these symptoms. So what I used to do to lose weight in my 20s and 30s no longer works, because
It's
I'm
annoying, isn't
fighting.
it? You have to work a bit
Yeah,
harder, or you know, put a little less in.
you know, and that's another thing. You know, we're taught about being skinny. You know, you just eat less and work out more. But that, for women in midlife, no, that's
No.
not going to work, because what we are actually going through is a hormonal change, a hormonal shift, and that's what needs to be looked at. So
Yes, it
yeah.
is. It's it never ceases to amaze me that I've got three kids that have all gone through secondary school and done sciences through the school. And I said to them, you know, how much talk was there about perimenopause or menopause? And they sort of look at me like, peri what? You know, and you know, that's today. It's alarming, really, isn't it? So
Yes.
something has to change at sort of grassroots level in the education system, something has to change in the medical training system. Because I know I've got friends who are GPs, and when I worked in that field, so many of them would say it wasn't a module that we studied. You know, it wasn't depression that was that we didn't really study that, you know, maybe a couple of hours. And the same is true of the menopause. So what hope is there for people like you and me if they don't know what to look for?
Yeah.
It's really quite frightening. So, but like you say, you know, people like you are making waves, you're writing books, you're getting it out there, you're talking about it, which is just so brilliant, because eventually it will filter through, I hope,
Yes.
to the next generation that comes through, so that people don't have to suffer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and even with what you're doing, you know, this spray, because it's not just about the spray that actually removes the glue off your skin from the HRT patches. It's everything around it. You know, it's everything around it. Really, just raising awareness, even with your videos that you share on your page, and just opening up that conversation to just give women the
Yeah,
permission. It's okay to talk about
it
it.
is, and to say that you are worth that, you know, because I think what we've discovered on our journey is that there is that sort of very low-lying, low self-esteem where women are saying, oh, you know, it's only glue, it can just sit on my skin and stay there. I'm just grateful because I don't feel so terrible like I did 6 months ago. I'll live with that. But why should
Yeah.
we? You know, why should we walk around with a patchwork quilt of glue squares all over our lower regions? It's
Exactly.
not a good look, and it's not good for your skin either. You
Yes.
know, it can cause irritation, and you know, it's all part of the bigger picture, isn't it, about wellness and
Yes.
prioritizing each other and ourselves to just take better care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just excited about this movement
Mm.
that is currently going on with menopause, and may it continue, because like you said yourself, you know, other companies are coming up now, women led companies specifically for women, to
Mm.
provide solutions for women in midlife. And I just think it's phenomenal. So if anything, you know, the good that is coming out of us actually talking more about menopause is what women are actually doing to empower
Mm.
ourselves, you know,
Yes.
to be our own health
Mm.
advocates. And like you said, to
And each
feel like ourselves
other,
together.
and each other as well. It's
Yes.
that sort of the sisterhood for me. I think, you know, we've really been so blown away by that on our journey. We're only in the second year of how women are collaborating together because we've got a common goal, and that
Yes.
is to look after each other. Like you
Yes.
say, if you see a friend that's literally rock bottom and on their knees, you've got to be there to help
Yes.
diagnose, get them to the next stage. You know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I'm just grateful that we're having these conversations. I'm just grateful for it. Now, somebody who's possibly going through what I went through a few years ago, they're going through it now. They're going to watch this video
Mm.
and they're going to feel encouraged. And I hope that's what women feel when they watch this video and any of the other videos that you have on your platform.
Mm.
They're going to feel encouraged, they're going to be inspired, and they're going to know that there is.
Oh, I've lost you. I've lost your sound. You've disappeared. They're probably on speed dial saying I need your help. On that note, Emma, I wanted to add on the end of this video how people can interact with you. Do you take direct messages, you know, people who want to, maybe who are in the same space you were in and maybe want to chat to you privately? Do you do that, or would you rather
Yes.
not do
Yeah.
that?
So you can contact me via DM on here on Instagram at Emma Lady Inspires. You can go on my website, therelentlessboss.com. I offer one-on-one consultations where I share my menopause blueprint. So what I actually have been using to to help me and also some of my coaching clients to really minimize the symptoms. You know, and I'm not a medical practitioner, so I always recommend that women in the first instance go to a medical practitioner. But yeah, the menopause toolkit is there and it's helping women so that they can actually really get some real solutions to their menopause symptoms. So yeah, so you can contact me via my website and also DM here. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm a
You
lady.
are. You're a busy girl. You're hard, you're going to be hard. You're going to be bombarded, I think. I'm going to share this video and I'll put the links to your handles underneath at the
Thank
bottom.
you.
But I'm very conscious that I said I would keep it to half an hour, and I'm looking. I'm
That's all
going. Oh
right.
God, I've taken 50 minutes. I'm so sorry, but I
It's all
could
right.
talk to you
Thank
for
you.
hours. I think, you know, it's just really brave. For that's the word that I keeps coming into my head, that when you've been through the journey that you've been through, and I think by your own admission you would say possibly still not entirely out the other side, but you're on the right path.
Yes.
It's not easy, and it takes a lot of guts to dig deep and share what you're doing, so I'm so grateful to you for that, and I hope that
Thank
other
you,
people will
Lisa.
be too.
Thank
You've been a real
you.
inspiration,
Thank
Emma,
you so
and
much for having me.
oh no, it's been fabulous, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Thank you. Take care.
enjoy your day,
Thank
and
you.
we'll
You
catch up
too.
soon. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.